There are three things that I primarily collect, and those are coins, books, and VHS tapes. And I came across this the other day at a thrift store. It's Gold Fever. It's a 40-year-old documentary or presentation about the gold fever rush in Dahlonega, Georgia, that happened in 1828. So this shows all kind of stuff. It shows interviews between people that live and know about Dahlonega, and it shows all the buildings and the history. And to me, it seems like it might be lost media because I couldn't find anything else on the internet about it except for a 30-second clip where Marion Boatfield is being interviewed, who was a local Dahlonega legend who lived until 95. And I thought it was pretty interesting, so I decided to put it on YouTube. So I hope you enjoy.
Once again, welcome to Gold Rush. I'm extremely pleased to see the huge crowd we've got here today, and a lot of old timers in the crowd that I've seen many years before at Gold Rush. Glad to have you all back with us.
Every October, the small mountain town of Dahlonega is transformed during Gold Rush days. For the thousands of people who come here, the festival is a symbol of the old Gold Rush days when the sounds of mining echoed through the hills. For more than 150 years, life in Dahlonega has revolved around gold. In the early 1800s, when the town was established, it was the center of the first gold rush ever seen in these parts. Today, the town has experienced a boom, a new gold rush of sorts, as tourists pour into the area to look for gold and to learn about its history. For the most part, the town itself is little changed from long ago. The buildings surrounding the tree-lined square look much as they looked 100 years ago, and even the names of the shops reflect the importance of gold to this community. Before the gold, there was no town of Dahlonega. The area was a wilderness, its climate harsh, its terrain rugged and uninviting. Its only inhabitants were Cherokee Indians, whose villages were scattered throughout the Blue Ridge Mountains. In 1828, all that changed. The word went out that gold had been discovered in Georgia. Almost overnight, the prospect of quick and easy fortunes attracted thousands of people from around the world. They stayed here for 20 years, until 1848, when gold was discovered in California. Then many of them rushed west, abandoning Dahlonega for another chance to strike it rich. Not much remains of those early miners. A few ruins from a few mines lie scattered through the woods. But the stories, the tales, and the traditions that were established here so long ago, they remain.
And my mama was always looking for that next shoot to come in. And she found this little thing right by the side of the house, and it was rich. It was small, but it was as rich as it could be. Papa was in North Carolina then, moving that mill up there, setting it up for him. And he was going to come home, and he hadn't sent her any money. And she got out with her gold pan, and she found enough right there to get, food for the next 2 or 3 weeks, just a little while there, with her gold pan.
Since 1934, Marion Boatfield has lived here, in a house that, at the turn of the century, was one of the offices of the Dahlonega Consolidated Gold Mining Company.
Well, I got, just to get out and mine for a living, I didn't do it, but I was with my mom and daddy all the time. I'd paint, I'd mortar it up, I'd help, feed the mill. when he'd run the mill. If he run it at night, why, I'd go stay with him. And if he went around in the holes or anything, prospecting, or when he worked in a tunnel or one of the cuts or anything where it'd be any danger of it caving in, some of us stayed with him.
I was probably about 10 years old when I started to following them around and panning a little bit, but by the time I was 12, why, I was doing a pretty hard day's work.
Robert Jenkins has mined for years, but today he spends most of his time here at Gold Miners Camp, where he teaches tourists how to pan for gold.
Well, my grandfather was named Wash Jenkins, and so he was the first miner that I know of in the Jenkins family. And so then my father was Tom Jenkins, and so then he had a brother named Bill and one named Luke, and all of them was gold miners. They all mined for gold, and so that's how I got started fooling with it, was by helping my father, Tom, and Luke mine for gold, and my brother, older than I was, why, he helped too. His name was Tommy Adam, my father.
See, I'm a fourth generation gold miner, and I've been around it and heard it talk all my life. Uncle Charlie, Daddy, and I remember my grandfather sitting around talking about it. And old Frank Wheeler over here worked on it all his life. And as a boy, I listened to the conversations because I've always been interested in gold. It's been a fascinating thing to me.
The Cresson family has been involved with gold for generations, and John Cresson, after a career in the military, returned to the traditions of his father and grandfather. Today, he runs one of the few active gold mines operating in North Georgia. Amy Trammell never set out to be a miner, but in 1925 she married and moved to the little town of Auraria. Her husband, Bill, began teaching her the tricks of his trade, and it wasn't long until Amy herself was caught up in the excitement of looking for gold.
Well, I didn't know anything about it, and I'd never seen any raw gold. And I was kind of surprised because Bill never had told me that that's what he done. And he would go out and work and come back, and he'd keep telling me he wanted me to let him teach me what he knew about it. He was 13 years older than I was, and he was born and raised there in Auraria, and his father was too. And that's all the Trammell had ever done, was mine for gold and pan for money, farm for food.
Some weeks we'd have meat, next week we wouldn't have no meat. We'd just have beans or whatever come handy. That's the way gold mining is. Sometimes you live high on the hog, and sometimes you don't have it. But just tell me one that ever quit it, and as long as he could stay at it. The old timers like my daddy.
Gold fever. It's the promise of digging into the ground and hitting a vein so rich that the gold will never stop. It's kept thousands of miners going, kept them panning in ice-filled streams in the middle of winter, kept them digging day and night in tunnels deep under the ground, kept their hopes alive as they lived through hard times with little food in the house and no money coming in.
I tell you, it's a lot of fun, the mining. You can't hardly quit it, but you go through a lot of heartaches and troubles, disappointments. We worked weeks and maybe a month at a time. We wouldn't make $1. Bill had more patience than I had. He said, you have to stick with it. And then maybe we'd cut into a good place and be well paid for it in a day's time. Yeah, there's so many days that you don't get any gold. But you have to be willing to try.
For generations, the miners born and bred in the mountains of northeast Georgia struggled to survive. For them, gold held a special fascination. Day after day and year after year, the lure of that next big strike kept them going. Most of them never struck it rich, though. Most of them spent their lives chasing an elusive dream. They never let go of that dream. And through the years, families passed down stories of rich veins discovered and then deserted, of great rejoicing when a strike was good and gold was easy to find, and of heartbreak when all the money was gone and luck ran out.
There's one feller that's been working in a gold mine. That's to where it comes in the rocks, you know. Said he'd worked and worked and worked and said he'd gave up and thought that there wasn't no gold coming. And said there's one rock in there. He kept trying to prize it out and said it wouldn't come out. Said he just gave up and quit. Said another feller come along and kept prizing at that rock. And the reason it wouldn't come out, there's so much gold in there, it was a holding it together, but he finally got it out. And then that feller worked the gold mine, you know, after that poor feller done worked it right to it. And so.
And they found one mine over here, around Dahlonega here. They were so rich, they took a 1-gallon bucket full of ore out of it. My grandfather was there, my great-grandfather, W.R. Son, was there when it happened. They got 1-gallon bucket of ore out of it. They put that in a hand mortar and crushed it, panned the gold out of it. When they got done, they had a half a gallon of gold.
Through the years, gold has always appealed to man. Of all the world's precious metals, it alone combines 4 special characteristics. It is extremely rare, virtually indestructible, easily fashioned into jewelry or coins. And gold has its own special beauty. In Georgia, the gold belt stretches for 150 miles, from the farthest northeast corner of the mountains across the state to Alabama. The richest and most productive portion of it lies around Dahlonega, in the watershed between the Chestatee and the Etowah rivers. Gold was first discovered here in 1828. Although it had been found in other parts of the country much earlier, never before had so many people come together so quickly to search so frantically for the precious yellow metal. Miners by the thousands began to pour into the mountains of North Georgia. They soon pushed out the Indians who had lived here for generations. In 1838, the Cherokees were rounded up, and in one of the most tragic events of gold mining history, they were herded west of the Mississippi River. The devastating march, known as the Trail of Tears, left thousands of Indians dead from cold and starvation. But it did nothing to slow the rush for gold. Shortly after the discovery, a town was established, its name Auraria, from the Latin word meaning gold mine. Today, an old hotel and a general store stand in mute testimony to the miners who lived here. Auraria's growth, according to one of its residents, was unprecedented in any backcountry village in the southern states. Before the town was a year old, it had 100 homes, 18 or 20 stores, 12 or 15 law offices, and 4 or 5 taverns. Auraria's heyday was short-lived, though. By 1833, the town of Dahlonega had been established. It became the county seat, and all of the area's mining activity soon was centered here. Gold was mined in the mountains, brought into town, and shipped out to places like Philadelphia, where it could be made into coins. By 1838, so much gold was leaving the region that the federal government established a branch of the United States Mint in Dahlonega. From the time it opened its doors until the Civil War shut it down, the mint produced more than $6 million in gold coins, and this was only a fraction of the gold being mined in the area. In the early days, gold literally lay on top of the ground. Although big nuggets were few and far between, gold filled the streams and stream beds throughout the area, and many miners made their living with nothing more than a shovel and a gold pan. It didn't take long to find all the easy gold, though, and by the 1840s the supply had been exhausted. The miners had to turn to vein gold. The veins were hard to work, and the process of digging the gold out of the ground was slow and tedious, until hydraulic mining came along.
That hydraulic mining was a good thing. It done away with a lot of earth, but it got a lot of the veins that they would never have found by washing down hills. Oh, I've seen trees bigger than any you can see around here. They just lay them over in a few minutes. Just tear down a mountain in no time.
Water cannons, called hydraulic giants, literally washed away the sides of the mountains. They exposed veins of gold that otherwise would have remained buried for years. This new method allowed a few miners to move tons of earth in a single day. It also cut huge gashes through the hills and left deep canyons that scarred the countryside. After they washed the mountains down, the miners had to separate the gold from the quartz and other rocks that contained it. They did this by pulverizing the ore with heavy crushers, or stamps.
And I can remember when there was at least 5 stamp mills that you could hear overnight from where we lived. You could hear all 5 of them are running. Now, they didn't run just overnight, they run day and night. There was one man that run them in the daytime. He come on at 6 in the morning, and he went off at 6 of the evening. And another feller come on at 6 in the evening and run it till 6 next morning. And so they kept them there stamp mills going day and night.
In their efforts to find all the gold in North Georgia, miners began working underground. Shaft mining exposed veins deep in the earth. As gold became harder and harder to find, the scale of mining operations began to grow. Companies were set up, and elaborate tunnels were blasted out of the mountains.
But the dynamite was the worst things in them. Now, them fool were going back right in behind the blast, 'cause they had to blast them rocks a lot of times, and so you go back and all that smoke and everything, and it'd give you the dynamite headache. And mister, you ain't never had the headache till you get the dynamite headache. Then there was a lot of good gold mines around here. There was a Calhoun gold mine, there was a Consolidated, Crown Mountain, Finley, and the Bass, and the Lockhart, and the Boulder Fields, and the Free Gym, and Eddyville River, and King Creek, and Yehuler, and the Loud Gold Mine, and Battle Branch, and the Barlow. Oh, I can't remember half of them now, but there was a bunch of the gold mines that they worked.
By far the biggest mine ever constructed in North Georgia was the Dahlonega Consolidated Gold Mine. Chartered in 1900 and out of business by 1906, the Consolidated was a legend even in its own time. Investors from around the country put together $5 million to build a huge mining complex. It was the largest gold plant ever established east of the Mississippi River, and it represented big dreams that were never fully realized. Poor planning and management shut the mine down in only a few years, but with its 120 stamp mill and 500-foot tunnel, it employed many miners during its short life.
See, this big one right here was the mill. See, there was 120 stamps in there. And this here was where they roasted ore. There's 8 furnaces in that. And there was a pipe went from that to the smokestack. And that's the way the thing looked. I remember it looking like that before they tore it out. That building was 300 feet long. 3-story building. And on the lower floor down here of that, they had 2 rows of concentrating tables. Well, I don't know. It shut down, I think, about 1905. You see, this is just what my daddy's told me. I wasn't here then. But it shut down about 1905, he said. This house here was built about 1900. So they sang the bill.
After the Consolidated closed, mining continued in Dahlonega on a lesser scale. Miners worked deposits scattered throughout the area or ran small stamp mills. Some of them worked on dredge boats in the Chastity and the Etowah rivers.
They tried mining every way nearly with water. That was called hydraulic gold mining, sluice boxes, so every kind of way that they could get. And there was a few people that never did do it any other way except with a gold pan. Now, they carried their gold pan with them anywhere they went, and they never did try a sluice box or nothing like that, as I know anything about. And so people made a good living at it back then, because times was rough in the Hoover days. You didn't just go out and get a good job back then.
The Depression came and went, and mining suffered along with many other businesses. It wasn't until the late 1930s that another gold mining legend came onto the scene in Dahlonega. Major Graham Dugas reopened the old Calhoun mine, and when he did, he struck one of the richest veins the mine had ever produced. Major Dugas was a first-rate mining engineer, but he was also a promoter. He made a fortune in Dahlonega, and after almost 50 years, the stories of his schemes still circulate around the town.
They said he went up north and he had all the dashboard of his car, plated with gold and everything. Of course, he pulled somebody's leg, I guess, for some money after he'd done work today. I don't know what he done, but that's what they said he done.
So I don't know what ever went with the car. But now there was a lot of young girls that wanted to ride in that car. So Dugas, they have his picture up in the Gold Museum. He's a little short guy. I worked for him for a good long while, and he's a better man than anybody gives him credit for being. And so, of course, he was a smart man now. I know they went over to close him down once. He owed some money. And they went over there, and the feller had the sheriff with him, was going over to the mines to close him down. So he met the sheriff and man coming to close him down. He stood right there and bought a brand new car from that feller on the credit and sent him back to town. So he was a pretty smart guy.
Mining on various scales continued around Dahlonega until World War II. Then the men went off to fight, and the equipment needed to run the mines was sold for scrap.
They sold them that big pipeline and stamp mills and everything, just for the war purposes, And so that's where lots and lots of equipment left here. The mining equipment going was during World War II. And so I helped tear out that pipeline that run from the top of Crown Mountain to Chastity River.
World War II marked the end of gold mining as big business in the Georgia mountains. By the 1950s, people were able to find easier ways to earn their livings, and only a few diehards with a bad case of gold fever stuck with it. It wasn't until the 70s, when the price of gold rose dramatically, that interest in mining was spurred once again.
It's been pretty active as far as prospecting, geological work, and everything. It's been fairly active since 1975 up here. There have been several large companies in. They found some good ore bodies, and they found some ores that's rich. And there's a demand for Georgia gold because there's very little of it being produced. See, Georgia gold is some of the purest gold in the natural state you're going to find anywhere. I've had assays on some of this right here, run just as it came out, and it's went up as 98.46 pure. And no alloys with it. See, very little alloy. In some parts of the world, you're alloyed with silver, copper, and so forth. And if it's 75% pure, you're in good shape. I mean, that's good for them. But some of this up here is pure. That's the reason why Georgia gold is so pretty. There's no other gold in the world like it.
The days of the old mining towns, roaring and bawdy and full of life, are long gone. The few remaining buildings stand in ruins now, and the miners who once rambled through the hills lie still. The stamp mills are gone. The huge cuts that scarred the mountainsides will never be seen in these parts again. But the gold is here. It's harder to find and buried deeper in the earth, but it still lies inside these mountains.
I think there's still plenty of gold. I think there always will be.
See, Georgia gold is some of the purest gold in the natural state you're going to find anywhere. There's no other gold in the world like it.
That's when I took the gold fever, and there's no cure for it. No, that's been a long, long time now, and I've got it just as bad as I had it back then.